Welcome to Montreal Rocks. So excited to have as a guest in our studio, Sabrina Song. Sabrina, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
This kind of all started with your publicist. Now, we get many invitations, and I like the fact that what was put at the beginning is you're invited, and just that little bit at the beginning, just like, oh, I'm invited. It was kind of like that little personal touch, even though I know it's a mass email, but it made me comment on it, and then I said, well, maybe I should listen to this Sabrina song. So I'm in Vancouver, and I'm turning it on Spotify. I have it on the speakers in this house. I'm at a friend's house in Vancouver and we're listening to this. And I'm like, man, this is really good. And I asked our host afterwards, I go, what did you think about the music? And she goes, you know what? Sometimes when I hear a new band that I don't know, no, I'll like a few songs. I won't like others. I didn't dislike any of those songs. So that's a great compliment coming from her. And I just loved every one of them. They just kept getting better and better. So uh, that's why I decided to take this interview and to talk to you, especially because you'll be coming to Montreal very soon. But we'll get to that a little bit later on. I always like to start with your origin story. I want to know, where did Sabrina come from? Now, I know that in terms of singing, it all started at the restaurant you worked for. So maybe tell us a little bit about how that happened. Maybe what's the first song you sang?
Yeah, well, thank you also for the kind words about the album. I love to hear that your friends enjoyed it too. That was very sweet. Yeah, I basically I singing was like the origin of making music and anything to do with music for me, just basically since I was really little. And I would do choir in school and play and orchestras and just do everything I could with music. And then, yeah, it wasn't until high school that I I would sing a lot of covers. I wasn't even really songwriting until the second half of high school, maybe, but I would sing covers at like the one upscale restaurant in my town and like at the farmers market and stuff. And I think it made me a little more comfortable singing music that wasn't like for theater and choir and whatever I was singing around the house. It was good, definitely good practice. I would sing a lot of Sarah Bareilles covers and standards like Fly Me to the Moon, and it was like during brunch. So I
Yeah,
was I was providing some ambiance.
you're working the crowd. You're working the
I
crowd.
was
You don't
working the
know how to do it.
crowd. Yeah.
And of course,
Yeah.
you mentioned the theater. Now, you joined the theater before you even knew that singing was a thing inside of you. But what did you learn from the theater that maybe applied to the music that you now do or the performance?
Yeah. I think it really made me realize that I love performing. I feel like I actually did mu like plays locally and stuff just because I loved singing and like I didn't know anyone who was like in a band or that just like hadn't even crossed my mind. Like the main option was doing plays or uh to me at the time or choir. So I think once I got older and I was like, "Oh, I can there are other avenues to do what I already love doing." And I think it actually, I was so comfortable performing in plays and stuff in high school. And then I think I kind of needed to come back around full circle. Like then there was a period I was very uncomfortable performing my own music because I had never done it. Excuse me. But yeah, so then I feel like I worked my way back up to being as comfortable as I was with performing in the beginning, after doing shows of my own music for years and realizing that was what I wanted to do. So.
Well, comfort and discomfort. That's a really interesting topic, one that you're, I would say, well versed in because you felt kind of uncomfortable during music school because you're maybe, we're going to talk about the imposter, and I'm not going to say syndrome because we're going to cross that out. You have a new word for me, and I really appreciated that conversation. So we'll talk about that very soon. But you felt a little bit of a discomfort in school till you kind of got the hang of it and started building, I guess, more confidence, self-confidence. Uh, how did that really happen? Was there a moment where it kind of shifted?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I didn't think I was going to go to school for music in a way that wasn't related to to theater for a while just because that was all I really knew. And then I had an amazing music teacher in high school, Mr. Schaefer, who was like, you should keep a journal and you should try songwriting, and taught a class that taught you how to record in Logic, not even start producing. But that was all just so new to me. And I think when I ended up going to school for it, I just felt like everyone was miles ahead of me, and had been thinking about this stuff for years and writing songs since they were 10. And I think it just took me a while to realize that like everyone didn't really feel like they knew what they were doing, or even the kids who came into it with a songwriting background, like you're becoming an adult, like you're growing out of childhood, you're completely changing everything anyway. Like there was no reason to feel like I was behind, but I did feel like I was writing myself off a little bit, and it took me a long time to learn uh how to kind of not be apologetic about what I was doing, or like apologetic about the state I was at in my progress in what I was doing with music. So
I mean,
that's
you
definitely
were told just
accurate.
like, you know, you're better off recording a bad song than not recording at all. Like, don't try to overanalyze it. Just get something down, and then you could always rework it.
Yeah, I think I felt like I felt like I should just be getting stuff done. Like I think I was just creating goalposts that didn't need to be there at such an early point in figuring out what I wanted to do and what I even wanted my sound to be like. But I think I'm just definitely hard on myself in general, and I wanted to, get better and grow. I just wish I had done it with a little more compassion for the fact that I was kind of starting from
Well,
scratch and there was really no like rush. But yeah, I'm grateful for that period now. Like I definitely learned a lot.
you definitely scored a touchdown or however, whatever sport you're into, probably baseball from your cap. So you hit a home run with the album. Let's put it that way.
Thank you.
You've once said, I'm a raging perfectionist in a career that has no perfect path, education, guarantees, or rules of any kind. And I think that's probably that moment where you realize there were no rules, and that kind of opened up this whole, universe to you to actually try something on your own terms. I mean, you did a lot of the production yourself, if not all of it at the beginning, apart from this last album when you got some help, but that must have
Mhm.
been really, I don't know, like a freeing experience, no?
Yeah, I think I'm really glad that I ended up pushing myself to produce everything alone first. Partly because I just hadn't found anyone collaboratively that I felt like really comfortable with, and also just because I was like, this is the only way. At the time, it was like I will get better if I just, figure out these kinks and shape my sound by myself. And it was really freeing because it just felt like I needed to. I heard it in my head, and I always had, and I just didn't have the tools at the beginning to do it. And so I was just like, why can't I just figure this out? Like, I don't want to hand this off to someone else. And then when I found out I got a grant for the album, and I knew it was going to be like the longest, biggest undertaking I'd done so far, and I knew I wanted a lot of live instrumentation, I was like, this would be a really good time to bring in a co-producer, just to have someone else to bounce ideas off of. And I felt like I was finally at the point where I was secure enough in my opinions and my creative like vision for the project that I wasn't going to be like steamrolled by someone. I wasn't going to need to um feel like I couldn't express exactly what I wanted and fear that they weren't going to get it. Like I was like, this is my project. Like I know what I want, and it's okay to let someone else in. I was being very territorial about
Mhm.
collaborators because I had worked alone for so
Fair
long.
enough,
But
fair enough.
yeah.
It's valid. But, obviously you found somebody that was able to share those sounds in your ear to make them reflect in real life. Um,
Hmm.
you talked a little bit about the creative process. I know that you start your songs from a literary uh, standpoint. You start with the words and then bring the music towards it. I think you also um, you read aloud or you record your voice a lot and then kind of listen to that again. Um, this is a strange question, and I'm going to tell you why it's strange because I'm doing a test for the first time. I'm using AI to do my research. I did my own research, but I was doing a test. So this is an AI generated question, and I thought it was so cool I was going to ask it. It says, "What's your most unusual place or situation where you've had a songwriting breakthrough?"
That's a very relevant,
Robots want to know this.
that, that's a very relevant question to me, definitely, because I am not someone who usually like sits down and is like, okay, I carved out this time to write a song. Like I, I've done that before, definitely for myself, and tried, but I do tend to come up with the beginnings of songs or whole songs when I'm in a moment where I feel like I have time to think, like on the train or on a walk or when I just am not in the opportune, like not in a moment that makes it easy to actually finish a song. But I find that that's when I get like moments of inspiration, or I can sing to myself, or I can kind of like write some notes in my phone in a way that it's like, what else do I have going on? I'm like in transit, basically. Um, so yeah, there have been times like before a day job that I'm working that I'm like standing outside on the street, like singing into my phone and like giving myself notation about how the phrasing will be and stuff. Because I definitely do start with lyrics mo almost always, lyrics and melodies over like writing a progression.
Yeah.
So it tends to happen that way where I need to kind of quickly jot down the seed idea, and then when I have time and I'm home and I can go back and actually be like, what was that, and what is the structure of that, and finish it.
Unpack it all.
Yes, yes.
You talk about honesty, and I think it's a very important thing because all along this journey, I think that you had to come to terms with your own honesty, writing about things that you care about, not trying to please other people. Uh, why is it important, do you think, to be honest in your songwriting?
I think I think I really admire artists who have a persona and have like almost like a character and write from a place that is like larger than life, and they're not trying to be uh vulnerable and write from personal raw experience. Like I don't think that's what everyone needs to do, but I think for me that just actually what my songwriting is like trying to distill my emotions and kind of untangle the feelings and figure out like how can I articulate this complicated situation in my lyrics and in my songs. And I think that's why I feel so like it's so necessary to make sure that every lyric feels honest to me, because it's like that's just part of the of my intention with
Yeah,
writing, is like it's expressing myself and figuring those things out. So it almost feels like it would be a bit of a crutch to not keep massaging the lyric until it felt like the most honest uh version, just because that's what I'm after. Um, but yeah, I think I also definitely, I mean, I still think I have a people pleasing tendency, but I think that can be very like lethal, because you just end up in situations where you're letting people kind of walk all over you, or
tell you
like
what to
you're
do.
letting tell you what to do. And I think I just that's been a big part of the last few years, is kind of standing my ground in my life and in my like my writing, and kind of exploring different uh writing from different parts of myself that I used to kind of try and like compartmentalize. So yeah, I think that's just a really important part of writing for me, because that's part of what the reason I do it.
So if we think about your album, the title is "You Can Stay in One I- Spot." I think I did a typo there, and I love you the same. Now it's about all your friends, kind of after school, moving away to different places. You yourself moved to Brooklyn. That must have been quite a change from a small town here. I think you were in Long Island before. Uh, kind of describe to us what coming to this new city, you're now in the heart of the action. How did that maybe activate even more so your love of music and you're being involved?
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I grew up on Long Island and then I went to school in the city. So I had been in Brooklyn for a few years when I started writing the album, but a lot of it was during COVID as well. So it did kind of feel like a new experience kind of after the pandemic, which was also around when I graduated school and people started kind of relocating. My family moved as well out of New York. So I think I was just kind of having this feeling of like it felt like the city was totally different and I was out of like the schooling infrastructure that I had lived my whole life. Like it was just a lot of different it's what everyone experiences like post grad. Like it's just kind of like staring down the barrel of like what happens now. And with a lot of people coming and going into my life who uh physically, not relationship wise, but moving all
Yeah.
around. And I think I just was thinking like I was really just trying to capture what I was feeling. And I was mostly just having a lot of like gratitude for the people in my life, even the ones that like moved overseas or moved across the country. Like I just felt really lucky to have such great relationships. And so lucky and happy to just see them again in any capacity. Or I think for a long time I wrote from a place of sadness mainly, like when I first started getting into songwriting and was in a place of real like insecurity. And I just wanted to push myself to write. I think it's harder to write a song from a place of happiness than a place of sadness personally. And
True.
I was like, I want to write from places of gratitude and I want to
Nice.
unpack like certain relationship dynamics that I hadn't really let myself explore before because a lot of my writing had been so internal. It was really just all like excavating my own feelings about myself. And so this was kind of like a lot of writing for the first time, just about like turning outward and uh, which in a way was a little bit more of a challenge, but was also kind of just what I was experiencing at the time. And to answer the question about how Brooklyn has shaped the sound as well, like I think playing live more and more was really making me want to incorporate the live instrumentation I was using more and more in shows into the music.
Mhm.
And the scene that I was becoming more and more friends with in like the kind of indie rock, like singer-songwriter community, I'm just so inspired by my friends in there and like going to see their shows. And like I think they're the most talented artists like
There's a
I've
lot
ever
at
heard.
Brooklyn right now.
And
Oh,
they're just it's really cool to like be able to see them grow and like talk about these things and talk about writing with them. So I did also feel like a more and more sense of community there, even as like my personal circles were moving everywhere. So
Brooklyn is not just the Beastie Boys anymore. And people do sleep. Dad joke. So, you did mention COVID, and I think that's one thing that COVID did for us. I think for a lot of us, it gave us a new perspective on relationship and realizing that, the most important thing is not money, it's not fame. It's really the friends that we have and are able to keep. And I think that's a great investment. Now, just to finish off on your origin story, your life changed because of a fruit, specifically a strawberry. So strawberry comes out, it's a big hit. How did that change your life? Or what direction did that kind of shoot you in?
Yeah, that was like a totally kind of unexpected thing that happened because I was basically sitting in the park in New York and this guy came up to me and my friend and was like, "Do you make music?" And I was like, "Yes." And I just on out of impulse answered the questions. And he was filming and then he afterwards was like, what song do you want in this video if I post it? Like I have like social media. And I was like, um, maybe my song Doors or Strawberry. And he ended up choosing Strawberry. And I had never like seen this account before, but it was crazy to see this reaction to this song that had come out a year ago and was like probably one of like the quietest in my catalog. Like
Yeah.
it was not one of the most popular songs at the time. But yeah, it introduced so many people to my music and it was just very, I mean, it was so validating also just to see when you're given kind of like the platform and people are being shown your music that the response was so positive. Because when it first went up, I was like, I am so anxious, like this could go horribly. But yeah, it introduced me to a lot of new people and it opened a lot of doors and I've always loved that song of mine. I think it's one of my favorites. So that was really cool too that it was that song just because it was awesome that it got kind of this pedestal. Um, yeah, so it's funny that it happened that way, but it was kind of just like a you never know
Yeah.
what can happen situation with
The
songs
universe
after
gave
they
you an
come out.
opportunity, you took it,
Yeah.
and we went from there.
Yeah.
Now, we talked a little bit about it earlier, and you kind of referred to it, but imposter syndrome is kind of that you wrote an essay actually, which I thought was really, really interesting because I'm more of an entrepreneur. I'm more in the business world, and being an entrepreneur, you have that imposter syndrome, especially when you gain any means of success, because you just feel that it's so easy for you. So, somebody's going to figure this out, and then I'll be caught. But I found that everybody has a superpower, and I think you have a superpower. And for you, probably writing or singing is your superpower, but it's probably easy for you in a sense that you just do it. Whereas for me, to sing or to write a song would be very, very difficult. So that's why we have these conflicting feelings, but you wanted, you were talking about changing, and I think this is something that even in the medical field of instead of being a syndrome, calling it imposter feelings. Why that different choice of words?
Yeah, that was coming from I don't want to take credit for that, but for that phrasing because that was
No,
something that I had read. Yeah, that was basically the idea that when you call it an imposter syndrome, it's something that's your fault and something that is like very solidified and unchangeable and also like something that you're afflicted with. Whereas I just thought it was interesting, um, this piece that I had read that was saying what if we call it imposter feelings because it's actually what the world is projecting
Mhm.
onto you to make you feel like you're not feeling these things in a vacuum necessarily. And that's I just really resonated with that. I
No,
feel
I did
like
too. I did too.
yeah, it's just very I feel like a lot of the time and that was where a lot of like my early self-deprecation was coming from around music just because I think I felt like couldn't have I couldn't have the authority to it felt like I needed to be given permission to like do something or that everyone knew something I didn't or that I couldn't possibly get to the level where I would call myself a producer and be able to do these things for myself and I think I just realized like no one is giving anyone permission and I was being made to feel a little bit like I should just hand things off to someone because I was starting from an early place. So you're not gonna,
Yeah.
be incredible at everything you do right away, which was also hard for me as someone who's a perfectionist. But it was just one of like the biggest things that I learned at that time was like I can take my time, I can get better at this, I have control over how I feel about my skill set and like who I am as an artist, and no one is going to I don't have to live under like the circumstances that are being created that are expected of me. Like I just because I think that just because I'm being told like why don't you just send this to this producer at school like you don't have to do this yourself. It's like but that's what I'm saying I want to do and
Mhm.
I'm don't have to actually wait for someone to give me permission to do that. And also I I just have a lot of sympathy for people who are in a field that is heavily weighted towards one uh type of person. And you just experience a lot of expectations that are put on you as like what you know and what you don't know. And I think I was letting those expectations actually influence how I saw myself. Um, so
And I think
that's
a
where that comes from.
feeling, well, they say if we can observe our feelings, we kind of take away their power, and we kind of see that fear, that imposter feeling kind of go
Hmm.
through us, and instead of absorbing it, we just observe it as, oh, that's just a feeling, and then it kind of goes through us, and we go, yep, there it is, and then it goes away, and then you go like, now it's gone. And I think
Right.
that's a
Doesn't mean
great
it's true.
I think it's a great way to look at things, and it might even help a lot of other musicians who are maybe struggling with those feelings to maybe look at it from that different angle of
Hmm.
of just saying, no, it's a feeling, and feelings change all the time. I mean, you might feel hungry, and then you might not feel hungry. So feeling like that are going to change, or even people that are suffering from severe depression, you might feel like this is the end, but feelings can change.
Hmm.
In a week or two or in a month or even a couple hours, you might have a happy experience, and all of a sudden your feelings and your mindset have kind of changed. So there's always hope of a change when you kind of take away its power. Let's talk about the album. We're a couple songs. Let's go song by song. We have a couple more minutes. Not a lot of songs, but let's go before and after. So it's about the space between limbo and heartbreak is what we kind of get from that. Is there kind of a personal experience that directly influenced that track, or is that just some musings on the side corner before going to work?
That's actually was kind of inspired by a book I had just finished called Station 11. That was about basically this kind of post-apocalyptic like post-pandemic world as well. And it was kind of like a disease ravaged the planet so quickly that it was like planes were filled with people ready to take off and never even had the chance to. Like everything kind of changed in one moment. And it flashes back and forth between the um pre and post
Okay.
uh worlds. And obviously that is was, kind of the most horrifying version of what we were beginning to experience. But it also just, it's not, it doesn't need to specifically be about that. I think I was just the writing was very beautiful, and the way that it was kind of like described looking back and wanting to kind of hold on to these memories and this world and this circumstances that weren't there anymore. And it reminded me a lot of a kind of breakup circumstances too, where you're kind of in this new reality and you have to just kind of push forward past you can't yearn for like a past that isn't there anymore, basically. So,
So you can write a sad song.
oh, I can write a sad song. I can write a sad song. It's harder to write a happier song.
But I think it's good to have that, the reflection back of a before and after, because it gives you perspective, right? And I think as
Mm.
as you go, I'm in my mid 50s. I might have a bit more perspective, just because you eventually figure it out uh, with a longer time frame. But it's great that you're thinking about these things now, and it shows in the maturity you're writing. Next song, okay, okay, the stress of falling in love. Is there a story or a time where you felt particularly overwhelmed or transformative by maybe an experience like that? Love changes
Yeah,
people, definitely.
yeah, I think it really is just trying to capture that feeling of like, you know, there's so many things that are obviously beautiful about falling in love, but it's also just can be incredibly anxiety inducing to be willing to put your trust in someone that you often didn't know like a few months ago, and hoping that they feel the same way as you, and there being just this baggage that you need to overcome, or like walls that need to come down. And I felt like I kind of wanted to write like a love song that was coming from that place of like reassurance. Like I do feel the same way as you, and I do love you, and getting over that hump of like trusting each other. So
Last one I want to talk about is Happy to be here. Uh,
Hmm.
Finding contentment despite life's complexities is kind of the embodiment of that song, if I got it right. Uh, is there a moment in your life when you felt that sentiment like strongly? Just
I think, yeah, Happy to Be Here was the last one written for the album, and I feel like it's like a kind of true love song to me out of everything I've written in that it's kind of like coming out of a period of experiencing bad relationships or like love in an unhealthy way and experiencing a very healthy, loving relationship and being like, wow, this exists and this is really nice and you can really put your trust and faith in this person like the way you would with friends. And I just think, it can be so difficult to imagine that when you don't have it. So it's kind of just like being in awe of like the feeling of being in love, honestly.
so you did finally end it with a positive song, one of
Yes, that was
gratitude.
there's a reason it's last on the album for that reason.
All right, I want to. It's something I sometimes do with my guests, and I show them their first Instagram post. Now, this is from January 26th, 2018. Just for simplicity's sake, I printed it out.
Aw, that
Tell
was
us.
my first show ever.
So Sabrina Song live at the bitter end.
I remember every second of that night. I was horrifyingly nervous. That was the first show I did for my solo music, like with my original music. I was terrified. I thought it was really cool that it was at the bitter end too. I was like months into college. That's really funny. That's the first post up, but yeah, that was a really special night for me to look back on.
Yeah, probably fear at the beginning, but good vibes by the end, knowing that you actually kind of slayed your dragon. You went up on stage, you bore your soul, you shared songs that you wrote, and you just put it
Exactly.
out there for the world. And look where you are now. You're touring this new album. You'll be playing the Bar Ritz on Tuesday, November 26th,
Hmm.
supporting Carol. I don't know how to say the last name.
Carol
Addis. Okay, that's
Addis.
easy.
Hmm.
Carol Addis,
Hmm.
I'm crushed because I won't be there. I will be traveling, but we will keep in touch, and you will tell me next time you're in town. I have a feeling it's going to be bigger than Barlow Ritz next time you're in town, happens to people of your caliber, of your writing
Thank
skill.
you.
But I guess we'll just end with just a off the wall random question that I just saw from your. I don't know where I saw this, but what's your favorite sweet tarts flavor?
Sweet tarts flavor. Well, sweet tarts are my favorite candy, but
No,
they are
that's not creepy.
indistinguishable from
It
each
was in
other.
an interview.
Oh no, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm just so happy to hear them mentioned. They don't really have they're I think they're just food colored differently, to be
I think
honest.
so
I
too.
You can't go wrong with the selection. I literally have them in my bag that I'm eating while we're on the road this tour.
But they are
So
sweet and they are sour. So which one are you? Are you sweet, a little sour, a little bit of both? There's nothing wrong with being sour sometimes.
that's a good question. I think I would say sweet though. I think I'm too scared to step on other people's toes to describe myself to be someone who is presenting as sour.
Awesome way to finish this. Thank you so much, Rena, for your time. We loved having you. Again, Barlow Ritz, Tuesday, November 26th. It's going to be kind of this intimate. I really wish I could be there because I think it'd be the perfect venue. It's kind of small, and we'll see
Mhm.
you at your best. And the next time it's going to be a bigger hall, and you'll maybe be singing to more people. But this is where you'll see Sabrina Song, you know, close and personal. Be there. Make sure that you're going there. There'll be a link in the article. And I thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me.